Now. Okay, hello everybody. My name is Bradley Grunner, and the name of my channel is A Male Space. And this is my first video in some time, and several years ago, if you're still following me, you can see that my older videos are about nutrition and fitness and bodybuilding, but this channel is going in a different direction now. I'm going to be making videos about men's health generally and men's well-being, including mental well-being, nutrition, fitness, the gym, and all of that. So I will proceed today. I'm here with Andy Nowicki, and we're going to be discussing the situation that men find themselves in today. And I've titled this video Men in Trouble because it's a multifaceted topic that we were going to discuss from different angles, so to speak. And I'm going to start now. And Andy, could you tell us a little bit about yourself? I know you have a varied topics of talk, writing, socio-political matters, but today we're going to focus on men's health and well-being, and the state of men pretty much overall. So I'd like to
Mm.
focus on that. So you are the author of Ruminations of a Low Status Male. That's a series of books, and also the final solution to the incel question, right?
Yes. Rumination. Let's see. Let me just first of all, Bradley, thanks for having me on.
Okay,
I
thank you.
appreciate it.
You're welcome.
I'm honored to be on your show,
Thank you.
and I'm trying to think. Let me think of the titles that would apply to the subject matter that we're discussing. Definitely, ruminations of a low status male. The yeah, the series, or it was just actually it was just one, a final solution to the incel problem, and uh, there's one other one that I'm not thinking of right now. The title is slipping my mind, but if you look me up on Amazon, you'll and peruse my nonfiction, you'll come across it, and I'll I'm pretty sure I'll remember it sooner or later. So yeah, but those two are definitely relevant to the subject matter of what I guess we're going to be discussing, which is what it's like to be male in the West in 2025 or thereabouts.
Yes, I read The Ruminations of a Low Status Male, and it hit home with me, and I'll get into that. I did not read the other books about the incel problem specifically. I just read the ones about the series of Ruminations of a Low Status Male. So, if
Yes.
you could tell the audience, for those who haven't read your books yet, if you could just, let's say, as briefly as possible, or concisely, what
Yeah.
brought you to the focus in your videos about the inceldom, as I like to call it, womanlessness, and the disenfranchisement of males generally? Because I those are the videos that I am especially interested on your channel. So, what brought you into that for those that didn't read your books?
That's a good question. Personal experience, observation. Um, I think we just kind of learn as we go. I'm of a somewhat advanced age. I'm 54, but I feel like I'm still learning. Like I don't think anything in my nothing. I don't think anything much about what I was taught in my childhood or adolescence or in my college years really prepared me for what things are actually like today. Um, and yeah, I think I think a large part of it has to do with my own the failure of my own marriage, which is something that I kind of keep closer to the vest. I'm not. It's not that I'm against talking about it, at all. But I don't. Uh, I don't want to. I'm not like a. I'm not a believer in it. Or I don't do the tell-all thing
Right.
with it. Um, but it was definitely that just charting the decline, uh, and dealing with the decline, dealing with having coming to terms with it, um, was certainly something that was difficult, but it's something that I think I think I have a lot of company as far as that goes. I would also hasten to say that I don't think I've suffered the way nearly as much as the way some men have. In that, um, my ex-wife and I are on amicable terms. There was no, there was not uh, like I wasn't dragged into divorce court, and I didn't have terrible lies told about me, and I didn't have, I didn't, my wife didn't keep my kids away from me, and so really, I think, although it was painful, and it was something that it's a wound that I think I'll carry for the rest of my life. It's I want to put it in perspective, and I acknowledge that I've been lucky in some ways, even though it's been something that it's been an unfortunate thing that I've had to deal with. So there was that you know I think when you're in a situation where you are with someone and you feel their love for you slipping away, and you knew it was there once, but now it's not there anymore, or it seems to be disappearing, and you don't know, like, you want to work on it, but you can only do so much on your own, and uh of course every situation is complicated, and we're only hearing it from my point of view here, but I would say that played a large role. I think another thing that's really had a big effect on me personally is having a son. I have a son and a daughter, and love them both. Get along very well with them both. I'm very proud of both of them. Uh, but when my son was born, uh, I felt much more. It hit me hard in a way that I didn't think it would. In that I felt like, what am I doing? I don't know what to tell. I don't know how to teach a boy to be a man in the 21st century. Like with my daughter, I felt like there were certain things, like as long as I was there, as long as I was loving and supportive, and a good role model, and so forth, that was that was something that went a little ways. But I think with my son, it I did I've done a lot more soul searching, because I look at him and I see myself in a lot of ways, even though he's quite different. He's definitely he's 19 years old, so he's pretty much grown up, and he's definitely his own man. Uh, but I think I felt the kind of responsibility, you know, when he was born, almost immediately. It was like a very visceral thing, and so as a result, I've kind of been an unusual father, in that I think the typical thing for fatherhood, or the cliched thing is, if you have a girl and a boy, you kind of the thing we always hear about is the father that, like, spoils the girl, lets her get away with everything, and is real hard ass with the boy.
Mhm.
um and is always on his case, and trying to get him to do better, and I've been very much not the reverse, because I'm not much of a hard ass at all as a parent.
Mhm.
It's just not my style.
I
But
understand.
with my son or my daughter, but I think with my son, I just have this, like, this particular. I've always had this particular kind of sensitivity. Uh, that it's not that I favor him over my daughter, but it's just I feel, again, I feel things more acutely uh, with him for whatever reason. So yeah, just summing up, I think I was not prepared for what it was like to be, out there in the world, to meet a woman, to court a woman, to get married, and to keep a marriage together. I wasn't told things that I I wish I'd been told. I think, the culture keeps a lot of truths from us about those kinds of things. And that was the beginning of my interest in this whole subject, and then having a son, and also just, I mean, this is sort of an extension of having a son, but just seeing young people today, young men today, you know, and the things, the what plagues society today, uh, the issues that Gen Z men, the rising generation are facing, is something that I just feel, um, I don't know. I feel like I have some responsibility to attend to in some way or other.
Right. I could definitely empathize and relate to what you're saying because my dad was a negligent father, completely negligent, and also very mentally ill. So basically, even when he was present until I was 13 years old, until my family was separated and broken, he really did not do much for me at all, even up until then. I mean, there were some good times, but
Mm,
my dad was negligent. And also, I come from a very tumultuous household. I'm not going to share details because
mm,
my friends and family will be seeing this, but they understand what I'm talking about. And I
mm,
can relate to what you're saying because I really wasn't taught much. And
yeah.
also, what was very confusing to me as a young person in high school, and I could also relate to you, obviously, because I have a son as well, which I'll get into, and a daughter,
Mm,
and they're both very young. My son is 8 years old, and my daughter is 6 years old, and I'm happily married. So
mhm,
I have the same view as you, is because I had no guidance. Meaning, my mother was a single mother, and
mhm,
my mother was doing the job of two people, so she really did not in, she did not intend to emotionally neglect me. But if someone is doing the job of two people and she has a lengthy commute to work, and she's doing maybe, she was a teacher, a bilingual teacher,
sure.
she speaks Spanish and English, and doing tutoring work, shopping, cleaning, all the errands one can do, there really was no room for anybody to tell me anything, even to guide me what career to go to. I do have a career, but I believe that I could have done some things differently if I had known better. I don't
Mm,
want to go into too much detail of what I went through, but what was very
mhm,
uh what affected me the most actually is that I believe that by the time that I went to my high school, Cardozo High School in Bayside, Queens, in the latchkey kid era, I'm a late Gen Xer. I am 45 years old. There
mhm,
seemed to be a really huge fixation on status. And that's why your book hit home with me because my uncle went
yeah.
to my high school only 16 years before me. And I think that he graduated in, let's say, 81 or 82. And he described the culture to me as very ordinary, non intrusive, not nosy, and non confrontational. By the time the mid 90s came around and I went to my high school, I went to middle school in 92, and then I went to the
Mhm,
same high school that he went to, that the culture was, I would say, actually hostile. Meaning, even a woman I went to school with, who I actually am keeping in touch with now, and we'll be going on a double date with her next week. Actually, she said it very succinctly. She said, in Cardoza in those days, if you weren't loud and annoying, you were cast out. So, and everybody was very fixated on sex and who's going out with who and who's
yeah.
screwing who. And being that I was from the lower middle class, it seemed like, because I went to a school that was extremely socioeconomically diverse. I mean, Queens is so socioeconomically diverse that you could be living in a garden apartment which is not spacious at all. I'm not sure if they have garden apartments where you are from. And let's
Mhm.
say in a walking distance 2 blocks up from you, you could have a Major League Baseball player there in a mansion, which was actually in my town, but not my development of garden apartments. So it almost seemed like let's say, the people from the lower middle class as I was, and the people from the upper class who were mostly of Mediterranean descent, Greeks and Italians who seemed to have the money at those times, it
Mhm.
almost seems like these two groups were monopolizing the social status and the women, whereas people who were very ordinary and plain like me, plus I had horrible self-esteem, very poor
Mhm.
self-image, I suffer from depression, they just seem to crowd over the people in the middle. And I think the effect of sexual revolution does it actually, where
Yeah.
like Roger Devlin said, I want to get your opinion on this. And I guess this is a little bit of a scattered conversation, but I want to see your opinion on this. Is that I noticed this from day one in my middle school, is that, and even though no one told me about sexuality and what women are attracted to and what really goes on, that he said, and it's such a succinct line that I memorized it. He said that, like inflation, sexual liberation turns the market morally upside down while actively punishing the virtuous and rewarding the vicious. And around my way, the vicious were the ones who got the women. And back in those days, no one was talking about looks, no one was talking about height. No one was talking about 6 foot plus height. I don't
Mhm.
even recall a conversation about height. And some of the biggest poon hounds, the biggest womanizers that I came across were,
Cancel, what's it, cancel tilt or whatever the
yeah,
kind of stuff
well,
he was
yes,
built.
okay. So, no one, look, I'm not the best looking guy in the world, but let me tell you, the guys who were some of the biggest womanizers then, they were not gorgeous men. They were
Right.
simply wicked, right? So,
Mhm.
what do you think of that line? Do you think that sexual liberation does reward the vicious? Is this something that you
Well,
were told?
what the sexual liberation movement did, what the sexual revolution effectively did was to erode monogamy,
Yes,
and I think the thought was like, with every movement there are, the useful idiots, who believe they're doing the right thing, and then I believe at the top of it all there's, the smarter and more evil people who know the actual effect that it's going to have and
yes,
are doing it to ruin things. But I think that, among the naive, who believed in the sexual revolution, which I guess, it sort of started in the 60s, really with the pill, and then the mores that were pushed throughout the swinging 60s and into the 70s, and even the 80s, which, supposedly were more conservative, but still the sexual revolution that had firmly taken hold by that time when I was a teenager, and into the 90s when you were. Um, the the effect was to erode monogamy,
yes,
right? So before the sexual revolution, it was just sort of understood: one man, one woman.
right.
What if you're a man, you you settle on a wife, and she's your wife forever. Although divorces sometimes happen, but it's a scandal. It's something that people look down on, and it's better to avoid. So choose wisely. But
Yes,
so but also, I think when when uh, when that was understood, when it, there, I guess Jordan Peterson has talked about enforced monogamy.
yes,
And I'm not endorsing everything Jordan Peterson has said, certainly, but I think
yes,
when he talks about enforced monogamy, and a lot of people thought he was saying, like at the enforced at the barrel of a gun, he wasn't saying that. He was saying socially enforced monogamy. When that was the case, when that was the prevalent social more, people were happier,
yes,
um, because and people were much more likely to find someone to share their lives with, and much more likely to enjoy their sex lives, and but and so and this seems counterintuitive to people today, because it's like, oh no, you want to you want to sleep around, you want to get variety, you want to do all kinds of wild and crazy things to sow your wild oats before you have to settle down. That's what sort of I guess being more or less has been more or less taught or for a while. And but the truth is that when so the idea was, we'll get rid of monogamy, and then people won't be repressed anymore, and they'll be able to have sex with who they want to have sex with without shame, and they'll feel more fulfilled, and we'll all just be happier. But that's not what happened.
No.
It's not what happened at all.
Right.
And of course, it's not. I mean, if you were reasonable, and if you knew human nature, if you knew the nature of man, and if you knew the nature of woman, you would know that wasn't going to happen. You would know that what would happen would be exactly what has happened, which is uh, it's a reversion to what you have in more barbaric cultures, right?
Exactly.
Which practice polygamy, or where the richest or highest status men just have harems, and the men who are lower on the social totem pole just get shut out,
Yes.
or more often than not. And women are, when women are encouraged to put their careers first before they ever settle down or ever think about having children, the result is what we've got today. The degenerate culture that we have today. This whole Sheryl Sandberg. I think she's the one who said, like, date the cool boys, date the uh, you know. And when she says date, that's a euphemism, of course.
Yes. Yeah,
Um,
I want to touch on the term
yeah,
dating later on because we know what dating means. But go ahead.
yeah,
If you're not
yeah,
finished, go ahead.
yeah. So that's basically it. So now you have a situation where really the only people who are making out like bandits are the top tier men, the men who are highest on the social totem pole. When I say top tier, I don't mean the best men. I
Right.
mean the ones who are the most with the highest status, who are seen as the most desirable for whatever reason, because of
Exactly.
looks or riches or charm or whatever else. Uh, or fame and or fortune, or all the other attributes that tend to make men desirable to women. Um, but so they're making out like bandits. They're just, they've got all the options. Women think they have all the options because they're told, okay, it's you're in your 20s, have fun. But then they get, hung up on somebody. They sleep with some guy who's just using them, and they think, oh, well, I'll make him come around and want to be my boyfriend, but he doesn't. He just ghosts them and moves on to someone else because he can.
Yes.
And then they get bitter and angry, and they think men are men are pigs, when really they're just paying attention to the top tier of men. That
Right.
they're not noticing the others. And whereas when there was enforced monogamy, it was sort of like, you got with someone who was around your station, and that was okay. That was like, because there were fewer options. You just made it was easier to just to commit and to um and to fall in love and stay in love, I think. uh for a long time, ideally for a lifetime.
Yes.
So that's the poison of the sexual revolution in a nutshell, I think.
Yes. I'm glad you point this out. Because for me, I've noticed recently, and I want to touch upon a number of things that you said, but I'm glad that you mentioned this societal effect of the sexual revolution and how sex shapes society, because sex shapes society in various ways, and also if it's not regulated, we do have a resulting several resulting social pathologies that result from sex not being regulated. And I believe,
So,
and perhaps that you've noticed, that when people talk about sex, they cannot think past their genitalia. They're only thinking about the act in itself. They're thinking about dating and screwing. They can't ever see the effects that it has on the society as a whole. For example, broken homes and all the ensuing problems that result from broken homes or fatherlessness, such as
yeah.
criminality, truancy, all kinds of social deviances, teenage pregnancies, drug overdoses, gang membership. And why do you think that people cannot see beyond the actual sex act? Why can they only think with what's between legs? I mean, I've had some conversations online and offline about this, and they can't stop thinking about only the act. They never get to how it affects the rest of us. For example, people will say body count doesn't matter. But if body count doesn't matter, why are we spending billions of dollars from the federal budget on single mothers and their offspring that are fatherless? So do you think
Mhm.
the sexual revolution has led to such an obsession with sex that people cannot think beyond this? Is that what's going on here, or they just cannot face the music and they don't want the fun to end? Yeah,
Well, I don't think they're actually having as that much fun,
right,
except the, as I said, the really top tier guys,
right.
and even they hopefully come around. Like after a little while of having fun, I would imagine that they think to themselves, you know what, this is getting kind of old.
Right.
I really should mature a little bit and stop doing this. Stop
Yes.
just using using women and then leaving them behind. Um, but yeah, I think that we're 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 told to think about sex in a almost disembodied way.
Yes.
We're taught to think about it not in relation to procreation, not in relation to family life. It used to be like just a few decades ago, like the euphemism you would use for sex would be marital relations,
Yes.
right? That's what people would say, about that's what they would call sex when they were trying to, to not be, too crude. Um, they would refer to it as marital relations, and that even, what's inferred there is that it belongs in wedlock.
Yes.
It's something that married people do. Now, I'm not naive, and of course, people fornicated in the past, and that happened. That's always been the case. That's always going to be the case. It's not like everybody was behaving, um, or doing the right thing. It's not. That's certainly not true at all. But it was simply that society had standards, and so if you were a man and your thing was to, you were like a good looking guy, charming guy, and you seduced married women, you were looked down on. You were called a
Yes.
cad,
Yes.
and
Exactly.
and
Yes.
uh, and you were shamed and reviled. And of course, if you were a woman and you slept around, you were called various uh, unflattering things as well.
Right.
Um, and that was part of the whole uh, so, social contract, or part of how society kept itself together, because sex, when it's ripped from uh, wedlock, from the context of wedlock, you know very often uh, creates misery.
Yes. I actually, I definitely that hits home with me because what I noticed very at a very young age, especially, well, actually very young, because people were getting busy, so to speak, around my way. Maybe it was the sign of the times in the '90s across the country, but I do believe that social deviance does take a hold in the lower classes first, so to speak, or it's more exaggerated there. So,
Mm-hmm.
and some of these young, well, we could call them girls actually, because of the lack of fatherly authority or parental authority generally, some of these girls got into very precarious positions. And I'm not going to describe everything that I know about or have seen. I think you get the gist of what I'm saying. A lot
Yeah.
of coercion going on, a lot of literally passing around, so to speak.
Yeah.
And this is very concerning because one would wonder how we got to this point. I mean, there was a time, and you said that Jordan Peterson said that we would not enforce monogamy in his view by shotgun, but CADs actually did have shotguns pointed at them. There
Yeah,
were
that's
people,
true.
yes, so
Yeah, point taken. Yeah, there
yeah,
were times where there was actual coercion,
yes,
there was actual force,
right,
and
and right, and also even there was a time not that long ago where a father had the right to keep scumbags away from his family, whether it be his wife, his daughter,
mhm,
his son that he had to defend, whatever. So,
right.
uh, and also, how did I don't know how we got to this point because even if I reflect on even how my own grandfather was, and this was in the 70s and 80s, I don't recommend this, but there was a time when men could get away with defending their son or daughter. I mean,
Mhm,
my grandfather one time assaulted a man who violently threatened my uncle. Another time, his friend did pull out a knife on someone who was bullying his son and his father and said, I will F and kill you if this goes to father. So,
mhm,
why is it that we mention harsh methods for keeping society in order? How did we go from stand up men who are willing to take whatever measures to defend their daughters and wives and keep
mhm,
people from talking to their wives even? How did we get to this moral squeamishness that we can't do anything, that we should leave our daughters up for whatever availability to any scumbag that's charming or even
mhm.
criminal? How do you think we got here to this squeamishness, if you have any thoughts?
No, I mean, is there? I don't know if it's uh, it's just sort of like the whole prevalent propaganda. It's just sort of what if you're a man, like the worst thing you could be is quote controlling,
Yes,
unquote.
exactly.
Um, so there was a shaming of that kind of behavior. And so I don't know if I have any kind of brilliant answer to that,
Right.
except to say it's just, we've been conditioned to feel to feel that way. I mean, uh, and I'm, you know, I as a father myself, of course, I've sometimes wished, that it was the past, and I could get away with being a little more, forceful.
Mm,
There have been times I felt that way, certainly.
right. Because
Um,
go ahead.
well, yeah, I mean, like it's sort of like you don't want to go too. You don't want men to just be absolute brutes or just
Right.
be
Yes.
just go to pieces or just like get violent if at the least provocation. I mean, there
Right.
is something to be said for being for someone like that being a dangerous or having these insecurities or being overly controlling or what
Yes.
have you. But I think it's gone too far the opposite direction now, and we needs to go back a little bit. This
Right.
pendulum needs to swing back.
Right. But it just surprised me looking back as a 45-year-old man, even reflecting what I know about or been in the vicinity of. I'm not going to go into details here. Uh, to have that happen to my daughter, that the even what we can consider crimes committed against them by young, I don't know, boys or men, or what we call them,
Mhm.
I that would really set me off. And even
Oh, absolutely.
Dr. Stephen Baskerville, the political scientist who's been speaking lately a lot about feminism, and he wrote excellent books called The New Politics of Sex, which I read. He also wrote Who Lost America. He wrote Taken into Custody about the divorce regime. And I never learned more from anybody else about the divorce regime and sexual politics, which actually really it is politics that let the sexual revolution go through in all elements.
Hmm.
He has excellent books if you ever want to look into these topics. I recommend
Hmm.
them. And he has a lot of content lately on YouTube and Substack. But um, moving on, though, is that I've
Yeah.
noticed a lot. I'm new to Twitter, and I've noticed on Twitter what I
Mm.
saw for a while going on now about what you and I were communicating through messages about is this bashing of incels. And I think that this is interesting because for several reasons. Obviously, it's a very serious topic that is affecting society. Mass womanlessness, or what I call inceldom, is going to shape society in a very negative way. And we'll get into some of those.
Yeah.
But it seems the definition has gone through three phases as far as I know. Because at first, I believe, if I have it correctly, that it was what do you call it? A portmanteau, the combination of two words,
Mhm.
involuntarily celibate, and meaning
Yeah.
literally involuntarily celibate, meaning a man without a woman, but he wants a woman. Then it
Right.
went to incel, now means not involuntarily womanless, it means involuntarily womanless. And you have to be a man who gets on the internet and is a mean man who says mean
Yeah.
things about women. And then now the third definition is simply a guy someone doesn't like. And meaning, like, I
Yeah.
was on Threads one time in a conversation about one of these topics, and it said in my profile about who I am. I'm a husband and a father, and I'm here to discuss these issues because I'm very concerned about them. And some
Yeah.
man responds to me and says, "How could you be an incel and a husband at the same time?" Meanwhile, he does not know what I do in my privacy in my own home. And secondly, he said that
Mhm.
because I said something he didn't like. And
Yeah.
even there was a time, and no details, because I think that people bragging about their sexual prowess or frequency is very distasteful and really corny. But
Yeah.
I mean, to have me called an incel hours after I was intimate with my wife, you, you know what I'm trying to say? I mean, this is ridiculous at this point. And
Yeah.
what I want to ask you is that, again, maybe I'm being a little repetitive here, is that I consider inceldom to be what some other content creator, a small time content creator on YouTube said, is that it is more like a comorbidity and a symptom, meaning I believe that it's always on the individual man, meaning that if incels just took a shower, if incels just worked out and were
Yeah.
personable and got a nice haircut and worked on themselves and worked and gained all these accolades, that would solve their inceldom. But I don't
Yeah.
look at it like that because I consider inceldom a problem of a symptom or comorbidity of an atomized and broken society. It cannot be that
Yeah.
all of a sudden we have so many undesirable young men. And granted,
Yeah.
I've seen some of the content of these incel of womenless men. Some of
Yeah.
them probably are just men who, maybe like I was as a young guy, couldn't figure this out for whatever reason,
Yeah.
or environmental factors, social factors, home life, whatever it is that's distorting or getting in the way of him finding a woman, right? So
Mhm.
some of them do behave and act in a way that I'm going to say is not my cup of tea, but
Right.
we've we've always had men like that. We've always had men that had personality quirks, flaws, etc. Did we just all of a sudden have all these men who cannot so-called qualify for a woman? And even if we do have more pathological people around, what happened that we have more pathological people? So again,
Mhm.
no one is thinking beyond the genitalia here. It's always on the individual man. Now, what do you think about that?
Yeah. No. Well, in an article that I wrote, the Incel PSYOP on my Substack page,
Yeah, I read it.
I observe how when I was growing up, the kind of guys who would get called incels now were called things like nerds or dorks or losers or not nice names, not flattering epithets at all, but they didn't have this connotation of, oh, you must hate this. This is a kind of man who's dangerous and who is toxic, and you must hate him to be a good, decent human being, which is the connotation that incel has grown to have. So and so there's something really about the whole notion of um, that if the statistics that we're hearing are true about Gen Z and how many younger men are just completely on the outside of aren't talking to women, aren't don't have girlfriends, whatever, are just are just completely ignored. I mean, that certainly, if they want if they want uh, to be dating, if they want a girlfriend or want to get eventually get married, then and they're not able to, then right now they are, technically speaking, involuntarily celibate. And that's like, according to statistics, like 30% or 40%. I can't remember the exact number, but a huge number of young men today are are defined, could be defined that way.
Yes.
Um, and the reasons for it are the I think, I would refer back to the pathological uh, sexual mores that we have, since with the sexual revolution, and how it's made monogamy, how the erosion of monogamy has led to these circumstances, these situations where men who it's you have to be you have to be on the higher end of the societal totem pole to get noticed by women at all
Yes.
today, because it's the sexual revolution encourages uh hypergamy, I would call malignant hypergamy, because
Yes.
I don't think hypergamy in itself is a bad thing for women. I think it's a natural thing,
Yep. Exactly.
but 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 uh, but it has to be within bounds. So yeah, there's been this change of, but even like in the space between, let's say, 1985, when I was 14 years old, uh, and kind of a dork, or I guess maybe a nerd or something like that. Definitely on the outside. Uh, not 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 that popular, not that successful with girls or anything. But there wasn't just this immediate notion that someone like me was a pathological, was the kind of guy who goes on online and says all these uh, terrible things about women, or who gets a gun and just shoots a bunch of people, that's basically the connotation. That's what society, or those who are pushing the societal norms, because I think there's a deliberation to all of this, from the top, and that's where I think the true evil is. Uh, you know, but it's created this situation where we've got a lot of young men who are who feel very bleak about their prospects, not just romantically, but financially and otherwise.
Yes.
Um, and when you've got a bunch of young men with nothing much to lose, that's not a situation that you don't like the chances for the future, when you don't want it, even if you don't care at all about these guys, even if you're just uh, if you're totally heartless, but you're just thinking about it pragmatically. If you're pragmatic, if you're a social planner and you're being pragmatic, and you want society uh, uh, to continue in a non-disruptive kind of way, you'd think to yourself, okay, well, we better let up on this.
Yes.
We better give these guys a break.
Yes.
Otherwise, it's going to come crap. They're going to shoot us all. I don't know.
Yes.
Uh,
Yeah.
we're
Yeah.
we're creating monsters here.
Yes.
Um, but there doesn't seem to be much of a much deliberation along those lines, which is upsetting.
Yes, it is very upsetting. And the reason why I'm driven to talk about this, actually, and why I wanted to go this direction, is because what you're saying also is that it's hitting home with me, meaning that I can't go into my whole life story here. Perhaps in other videos I can, when I'm talking about myself, maybe I'll talk to you again, elaborate on my experience as well, how it relates to you. Is that I think also what happened as well with the culture. I'm glad that you mentioned the 80s, because when I was talking to my uncle about this, I'm very close to him.
Mhm.
He said in the 80s that like I said, it was more like more subdued. Like sexuality is more subdued, meaning that a woman went out with a man, and was an ordinary man who was headed for like a SUNY Binghamton, or maybe it was a nerdy guy, a very brainy guy headed for MIT, and the woman had maybe a high school girl boyfriend and
Mhm.
maybe a college boyfriend, and then after that, one or two boyfriends, she finds the husband, and that's it. You know what I'm saying? It wasn't, let's say, full blown
Mhm.
monogamy, but it was more subdued and more towards monogamy, right? And
Yeah.
he said also that people didn't talk about sex, meaning or rate other status according to sex, as I said before, meaning that even when I spoke to Dr. Helen Smith, have you ever heard of her?
I think I have.
Yeah,
That's she wrote a book, right? That was
yeah.
a sort of influential book.
Yes, she wrote a book, Men on Strike, and I actually gave her an interview because she was looking for men to be interviewed about dating in this era, and I volunteered to talk to her. So I gave her a Zoom
Mhm.
meeting. I mean, she gave me a Zoom interview, and I said, "You
Mhm.
can use my name; it's not a problem." And she's older too, and I'm not sure her age, but she also said this. Also, she said when she was young, high school, middle school, college, it was no one was rating someone else. I mean, if you understood whether a man was single or not, womanless or not, it wasn't this big deal. Like you have a woman,
Yeah.
you're cool. You don't have a woman, you're a loser, or who's doing what. And then
Yeah.
just 16 years later, when I went to Carlos, as I said before, like
Mhm.
Stephen Baskerville said, that sex became a currency. I mean, it's this currency. It's, do you have a
Mhm.
woman who has a boyfriend, who has a girlfriend? And it creates this really a social mess. And because
Yeah.
I think also because there's not enforced monogamy and there's even no thought of marriage anywhere on the time horizon with even the women even the men these young women go out with, many of them that knew back then, and they know now also, they're not marrying these guys, right? So
Yeah.
what it created for me, and this is relevant because it creates for, I think that I was a decent man. Maybe I was didn't there were probably qualities about me that maybe were not attracted to a woman that weren't bad. Because first, let's just face it. I mean, a young woman does not want to go out with a guy who seems troubled, seems not to be a leader, take charge, etc. I don't, that's wasn't my fault per se. I didn't want to be like that, but that's just who I was. I was a very troubled and depressed person. However,
Mhm.
what I notice also though, that it creates the situation where there's no boundary, meaning the girlfriend boyfriend designation at that time meant nothing in nearly all cases. How much could it mean for people in their late teens or early 20s who are not going to get married? So, what I noticed is that I was playing by a rule book that people were not playing, meaning, and it also seemed to me like I would even complain to my psychologist. I said, Dr. So and so, it seems like every damn woman has a boyfriend. Every freaking woman I come across, whether she's plain looking, somewhat pretty, cute, hot, whatever you want to call it, has a freaking
Mhm.
boyfriend, right? I said, what do I do then, right? Why does it seem like this, right? And then looking back, it just meant that in order, maybe this is incorrect on my part, that you would have to steal a girl from a man. How
Mhm.
else would you do it? If everybody's doing this and everyone's getting cheated on and cheating on someone else, well, you got to take a woman. And even me, not too much to kill myself, is that even one of the higher status, so to speak, pretty women, and viewers of my video are going to know who she is. I'm not going to mention her
Mhm.
name here. If I mention it to them after this interview, they'll know who she is. I was over her house one time, no details. And even though I knew her boyfriend, who was a little bit of a badass, but I knew her since I was about 5 years old, something came over me. I guess for the moment, I had some courage come over me and I initiated something. And we were going at it to a degree. And I stopped myself because she had a boyfriend. Fast forward, on my first day of college, I meet this very pretty blonde woman, fit in shape, great body, nice face. And I said to myself, how am I walking around with this woman on the first day of orientation? Me? I'm a regular guy, you know what I'm saying? So
Yeah.
I wind up in her dorm room until the wee hours of the night. I make no move. She told me she had a boyfriend. Now, why am I in this woman's room in the wee hours of the night when she has a boyfriend? And I said to myself, looking back, I said, this designation didn't mean a damn thing. And these kinds of situations, situationships, dating, BF
Yeah.
and GF, this creates a lot of chaos because there's no demarcation. Like what do you do? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Um, and you're more, I
Yeah.
guess you decide to be committed to your boyfriend or girlfriend if you're with somebody that you're not interested in. Uh, but if you are interested in them, then maybe you're just sort of casual with this
Yeah.
boyfriend or girlfriend. It's all just, there's no real commitment. It's all, everything's just malleable. And
Yes.
yeah, that does not encourage noble behavior.
Right. Right.
That
Yes. Because even if you looked at even some of the social cliques back then, and yes, even the lower middle class had some gangs back then. Also, I know that in popular media, I think that some people think that gangs are only for the worst quality of ghettos or
yeah,
projects when
the Crips and the Bloods.
yeah, right. But there were some violent gangs that came out of the lower middle class in New York amongst all the boroughs. And
Mm,
whether it was gangs or we also had a very big graffiti scene in the 80s and 90s, which was kind of linked to the graffiti, to the gang scene then also. Whether it
mhm.
was social cliques that were of the upper echelon, also, like I told you about before, it just seemed that everybody was going out with each other. Meaning, you'd see a woman somewhere, and this is her boyfriend, and then fast forward a
Right.
year, you see her somewhere else, and she's going out with his friend, and now his friend is the boyfriend of her. Meaning,
Yeah.
it just. And then for someone like me, and I had a friend who was very similar to me, who came from a broken home also, but a very sensitive disposition, not a bad looking guy, actually a very good looking guy. And
Hmm.
we're just here like on the outskirts of these scenes, not knowing, I mean, maybe knowing what's going on, but not knowing what to do. And if you do
Right.
this, you engage, you might have to throw down. You know what I'm saying? Like, I mean,
Yeah.
literally. And you mentioned that in your book also. I'm glad you mentioned is that this kind of scene does create violence and intense jealousy and envy. Um,
Yeah.
and again, this is something that people do not think about. And just to wrap that topic up, did you notice in the 80s, just to rewind to a degree, do you understand what I'm saying? Is that was sex less of a currency, so to speak? I mean, I guess you answered that before because
Mhm.
womenless men back then were just looked at as womanless men. They were not looked at as losers.
Mhm.
Or, people probably looked at them as guys that will probably eventually get over it. They'll find a wife.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's it. Go ahead.
Yeah. They're like they're a nerd. Nerd is a nice guy. You want to help him out. He just needs to. I don't know. Probably maybe in his case he really does need to just take a shower or
Yeah,
get a better haircut, or like it was probably more true back then. All the things that drive incels crazy,
yeah,
hearing today,
yes,
it was
yeah,
probably more true back then.
right,
Um and and because people were more kindly disposed, people weren't encouraged to be hateful towards men who were who weren't high on the social totem pole. That they were just sort of, they were made fun of, but then they were also sympathized with. Uh, and they like, there were, the other side of it was, nerds were smart, and they got rich sometimes, and or they like, there were good qualities to nerds or geeks or whatever.
right,
But there's no good quality to being an incel. There's no positive connotation to the word incel
yes.
now as it's used currently. So
Yes.
what you were asking me a question that I think I lost your question.
I think that you answered it actually inadvertently, without knowing. Maybe I just
Oh, about
was.
sex being the social current, not being
Yes.
the.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, I think it was just, you know, uh, it's weird. It's weird looking back on the '80s, and like, because it was not an ideal time. I'm not trying to idealize it at all. Uh, but but compared to now,
Yes.
it was, in some ways it's better now, but I would argue, because more people see through the bullshit now than did in the '80s. But that's a different subject. Like,
Yes.
you know,
Yeah.
like, more like, if you were a conspiracy theorist in the '80s, you were definitely an oddball. But today,
Yeah.
it's almost normal to, like, because everybody knows that what they're telling us is a bunch of lies.
Yes.
Uh,
Yeah.
so in that sense, things have improved, but when it comes to the sexual revolution, it had not advanced as far, and there were still, like, the shows you saw on TV, the sitcoms tended to be about happy couples, and with their nice kids, and you know shows like a Cosby Show or Family Ties or uh, what have you, Growing Pains. Those. I'm not saying they were great quality shows or anything, but they reflected back this sort of ideal of married life and family life
Yes.
that was more sort of normal back then, and so
Yeah.
there was less. So yeah, I would say there was less of the kind of malignant behavior and the like assigning of like calling everybody toxic, who's who even who says something that slightly offends you.
Right.
All that kind of irritating stuff
Yeah.
that's part of the culture today.
Right.
That wasn't so much there was no wokeness, there was no real political correctness or anything in the 80s, 70s and 80s.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, so it wasn't talked about as much. It was sort of like it was sort of nobody's business, and or if you did refer to it, you sort of found sly little euphemisms to use for it, innuendo or whatever. There's not really any innuendo
Right.
anymore because
Right.
that implies subtlety, that implies shame, that implies that there's some things you don't just come out and say, but you hint at.
Yes.
So that's how things like that's a way that things have changed for
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah. And I also don't think it's really the internet only because, as I said, I think the culture accelerated in a bad way very rapidly from the 80s to the 90s, because people will
Mhm.
say it's the internet, but I'm telling you, when I say this, as I said before,
Right.
the debauchery that I knew about and was next to, I'm going to use the word next to, in
Yeah.
the mid to late 90s,
Yeah.
it was bad. Um,
Yeah.
so, so,
It
um,
started. I mean, I have my my take on things is that I've written a few articles about this, and it's sort of my obsessive thesis right now. It's I guess in a way, but my take is that the collapse of the Soviet Union, the end of the Cold War, was when things took a huge downturn in the West, culturally speaking, and
yes,
so that includes the mid to late '90s. It was starting to
yeah,
all the malignant things were starting to take hold, even though the internet was barely around at that time.
yes.
Um, there
And
were things, yeah, there were already things in the air. Like the snowball had started accumulating, and it
oh,
was
yeah,
started rolling by that
yeah,
time.
right. Because I mean, I remember a stat that said the stat was that even from 1985 to 1995, the white and black population of the prison population for both of those races, white and black, doubled just in one decade. And I do not think this is the only factor, but I strongly think this is the factor, was no fault divorce and welfare, which
Right.
increased these social pathologies that eventually went from the black lower class to the white middle class that I was around
Mhm.
for my all my teenage years. And yes, and I it took a very bad turn. And that is also when I noticed that rap went from, and I don't want to get into a whole conversation about rap or music. However,
Mhm.
it's just part of the culture that was very influential. And we both know
Yeah.
this, is that rap went from, let's say, on the radio, some people knew about Slick Rick or Public Enemy or EPMD. And even these people were
Yeah.
just like, say, storytelling, some bravado,
Yeah.
political messages like Public Enemy or Brand Nubian, very into the black cause and
Yeah.
especially Public Enemy, kind of like a militant black type of flavor to them. And all of a sudden, it goes from that to the early 90s where it's just complete unbridled degeneracy and violence. And I
You
also
like.
believe that had a huge impact on youth.
Mhm.
And that's where, again, wanting to mimic this behavior sexually and socially. And now I'm going to have here in my outline, moving on to maybe, well, not maybe, another topic here, is that perhaps we do not have the answer to this, but what do you think And my view of this could be tainted by spending a little too much time on Twitter recently because I'm new to Twitter, and there's so
Mm,
many messages going on and so many posts that you could get wind up in what they call doom scrolling. And I mean, even I'm guilty
yeah.
of this. I'm very busy, but I'll be in a lunch break. I'm like,
Okay.
flicking through, and a lot of this content is all about freaking quote dating, relationships, incel, sex,
Yeah.
rating people, sex, incel, rating people, who's mid,
Oh
who's hot, right? And
yeah.
it's
Okay.
crazy. And these are people in their 40s and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And it's shocking. And what do you think is driving now? Okay, most people who are normal in public are not thinking about bashing incels. It could be that
Hmm.
people who do like beating up on other people because they cannot beat up on other people in person because they're going to wind up in serious trouble, physical trouble, actually. Um,
Yeah.
uh, do you think that what drives people to come down so hard on disenfranchised people? For example, not only
Mm.
disenfranchised romantically, sexually, and also financially, just overall disenfranchised. And it also hits home with me because I'm a man who was depressed and had suicidal ideation from 13 years old. I'm talking about serious depression.
Yeah.
My brother turned to, again, I'm not going to air everything out here. I think I'm safe saying this, even amongst my
Hmm.
family friends who will say this. My brother turned to criminality in his teenage years, and this would give my mother literally nervous breakdowns in my house, a very, very chaotic
Mm.
situation, right? So I'm
Hmm.
also, my father is, negligent, all kinds of things that are, let's say, not physically abusive to me, but having a
Yeah.
very, very damaging effect on my self image. So,
Yeah.
if I'm going to be this depressed boy, and I've had to do much self introspection and much so-called improvement on myself, not Andrew Tate improvement, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I mean, you could tell I got my bodybuilding photos here. I worked on my body. I love body. I love the gym still. I only competed once, but I got a natural pro card. My friends are gym buddies too, and
Mm.
I have a master's. I don't think it's not rich these days, but I make a low six-figure salary. I have a home, all that. What I'm saying is that not to, I don't know if that's brag worthy. I'm saying that I had to do a lot just to get to, where I'm at, which is not even
You kind of have to
extravagant. Yeah.
to
So
live in New York. You kind of
yes,
have to make
yes,
that much, right? It's
exactly. Yes. And
so the
I'm
cost
working
of
on,
living is up
yeah,
there now.
yeah. And maybe my online endeavor will work too. Who knows? But what I'm
Hmm.
saying is that I take offense to this personally too. And I have to realize that they're not saying it towards me, but I say to myself, I had a troubled upbringing. My brother had a troubled upbringing. Was I an incel? Was I an incel because I didn't get a girlfriend until 20 years old, despite opportunities to partake in sex even earlier, like that situation I told you about earlier, where I could have, let's say,
Right.
stole other men's girls and just
Hmm.
went for what my was thinking.
Yeah.
So I've asked people before, even in some of the X spaces or even conversations offline and online, and this comes up sometimes. I don't really aim to talk to people about this, but this is a hot topic these days, the sex, all that stuff like that. So I've asked them before, was I an incel up until, let's say, 20 years old? Because I was womanless until then, right? I mean, I had some interactions with women, so to speak, but to really get a girlfriend until I
Yeah.
was 20, was I an incel? I didn't hate women. I did not go on the internet and say mean things. I was not planning
Mhm.
to hurt anybody. Was I an incel? And they'll say, no, you were an incel. I said, but I was involuntarily womanless. How was I not an
Yeah.
incel? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
then I said this also. I said, no, you weren't an incel. And then I'll say to them, what else do I say to them? I say, okay, do I would I deserve ridicule because I didn't have a girlfriend at the time? Do I deserve that kind of treatment simply because I don't have a girlfriend? And they'll say no. So I'll say to them, then why is there so much bashing of womenless men online? They
Yeah.
Am I that's using the correct definition here? What's going on here? And also,
Hmm.
I'll get this out here: is that where do you think this satisfaction comes from? Is it just sadism?
Oh, well, it's um as far as why people bash incels, why people
Yes.
call men call you an incel. First of all, you were talking about social media. We're talking about
Yeah.
Twitter or X. that's kind of bottom of the barrel. I mean, I I'm not saying you can't find interesting stuff there, but
Yes.
I avoid uh, Twitter myself.
Yes.
Unless I go, if I get on there, I go to somebody who I find interesting and read his or her tweets. But I don't just scroll around because I know that I'm it's like designed to make me to ruin my day,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And, so yeah, it's social media. I think it kind of brings out the worst in people, and so there's a lot of there's a lot of name calling. There's a lot of like there's these kinds of exchanges where you have to act like if somebody said something mean to you, you have to act like you weren't bothered by it. You have to like so people put their laughing emoji up like after they get insulted, they put their laughing emoji up and like as if to say ha ha ha, like I'm
Yeah.
just laughing at you.
Yes.
And it's also it's like it's phony. I think there's something about that whole arrangement that just um I don't know, it doesn't seem like it's necessarily has to, but for some reason it does tend to bring out the worst in people.
Yes.
Maybe because they're like maybe because people control so easily. And I'm not against all trolling. There's trolls who are funny, uh, but I think there are the kind of trolls who just get on and just try to provoke people, try to get under your skin,
Right.
and then people hit back with their own thing, and so incel is a word that hurts. They know that it hurts. Particular. They know that it hurts men to hear that. So that's why they use it. If it's a man making fun of another man,
Yeah.
or a woman taunting a man uh, by calling him an incel. I mean, I tend to think that's a product of social media. Not. I mean, I don't know if people are acting that way, in the world when they're actually seeing each other and talking to each other. Um, I think that might be like something that's the result of being on like terminally online. And it's not that I'm saying don't be online, and I'm not a Luddite, and I'm not one of those people who goes around saying touch grass and all those other sort of annoying
Yeah.
cliches
That line. Yes.
that,
Yeah.
that you hear. I
Yeah.
think that I mean I think that though I think with the word incel, um, it's I think I mean, and one of the points that I was making in my article is you are encouraged to think the worst of men who already have it rough,
Yes.
right? You're encouraged to be mean to men who are already getting beat up by the world.
Yes.
There's something really wrong with that. I
Yeah.
mean, there's some. I mean, I think that's definitely a pathological state of things, and I think I mean, it's not like I mean, women get made fun of too, and they're like I'm not saying anyone's immune necessarily, but I do think women, I think that picking on women online is something that is frowned on much more than picking on you know picking on so-called incels online, just who just you call them an incel or say mean things to them just because you don't like some opinion that they have shared, or you don't like who they're voting for, or whatever, some really superficial reason like that.
Right.
um and I think the problem is there's like so I think it's a real problem, but I think it's exacerbated by by social media, especially. I think the internet. Do you remember the internet before social media? I think it
Yes.
was a better place.
Yes.
Um,
Yeah. I also
like
want. Go ahead.
pre Facebook uh, internet. You know, I think that, when people just, I guess there were message boards but mostly if you were talking to someone, you would email them. And I mean,
Yes.
there's not the same kind of, the world's not watching, to see you, like, really stick it to them. And, it's like, it's just private communication between two people. And so it's more,
Yeah.
it doesn't encourage the worst instincts of people. So
Yes.
that's my thoughts on
Yeah.
that question.
Yeah. I mean, just to briefly go over that before moving to the next question or topic is that there are two people. Well, one you and I have mentioned in private. I'm not here to slander anybody, but
Yeah,
this man is it seems highly intelligent, a great writer actually, who rips on such men in every article he writes. And then also, there's another prominent poster on X who actually is a professional, and he deals with mental health, and he keeps on making posts recently, consistently, about NEETs, the
mhm,
unemployed men, womanless
yeah,
men, and he talks in this way. And this is something that I think I felt when I was younger because of my circumstance. He keeps on saying this over and over that society doesn't need you. You better get your act in check, young man, because
yeah,
all you womanless men out there, all you do nothings who don't want to contribute to a society, and you think that by revolting or having a nonviolent revolt or just again the typical things, go to your
yeah,
basement, play video games, watch porn,
yeah,
nothing's going to happen with your revolt, right? But he keeps saying this, and also I I actually don't know how anybody can take seriously someone telling me or anybody else. Well, I'm not a young man now, but if I were a young
yeah,
man, we don't care about you, but you should care about us. No, it doesn't
yeah.
work like that. So,
Well, I
yeah,
mean, like, there's a place for tough love,
yes,
although what you're describing doesn't sound like there's any kind of love,
yes, exactly.
anything resembling love at all. But
Yes,
there's also a place for kindness. I mean, guys can be nice to other guys, can't they? I
yes,
mean, like, why can't we have more of that? Why,
right, right,
and without, at the risk of sounding like a pansy here, why
yeah,
can't we,
right,
why can't we have more sympathy?
right, right, exactly. Then the guy comes
More
on.
empathy,
Yeah,
even.
no empathy.
Yeah,
And the guy comes on there and says, my family were all good looking, hardworking people. No one in my family was fat. They're all good looking. They would all succeed today. My so and so did this. My uncle did that, right? And,
mhm,
it's really insulting to do that because many men in the past few decades didn't have that. We're
yeah,
talking about a fatherless crisis here, and this guy saying how wonderful and charmed his life was. I'm not taking it away from him. I'm not saying that someone
yeah,
with a charmed life should have a worse life. I'm saying that
right,
if you're talking to an audience who was not born into this, who did not have a charmed life, that is
yeah,
one of the rudest things you can tell them. And what just to share something here, also maybe it'll hit home with some of the men that we're talking about. Speaking of empathy, we can relate to each other.
yeah,
My channel, therefore, is actually going to be called a male space, as you can see. Is that
right,
when I was younger, I had this sense that, and it wasn't done on purpose, as I said before, but it gave me this sense that, well, if my mom is ignoring me, I don't necessarily know why she's ignoring me, but she's ignoring me because she's just simply too goddamn busy. You know what I'm saying?
mhm,
Does not have any more energy to tend to what I'm saying. And
yeah,
I'm chronically routinely ignored. My father ignores me. I go to a 4,000 plus school of all kinds of people from all over the place, people who I don't relate to. Let's see who else. And I'm having a trouble competing with those other groups that I'm talking about before, socially or romantically, whatever, right? So
yeah,
this gave me the sense of this is that, wow, society doesn't care about me, right? So that's why I believe that initially in school I did poorly. I don't know if that's an excuse or not, but when you give people the sense, either purposely or not, indirectly or not by one's own volition or people's volition, you're gonna get an angry young man on your hands. You're gonna get a guy who says "f society, and people do
right,
not care about me. I don't care about it." Right?
yeah,
So um, again, this is very narrow-minded thinking. I think that it's cruel, And
Yeah.
also, this leads me to another topic that I have. I'm going a little bit out of order here. I want things to flow properly, so I'm going to go into this. Is that what I find very insulting, also, and not constructive, is that it seems to be that these red pill grifters are going along with the malignant hypergamy. So not only do we have an inflated hypergamy by some or many women, I don't know, but we
Yeah.
also have the men, the most vocal men of the red pill so-called community, hammering down also, saying that you must look like this, you must act like this, and you must
Yeah.
become a guerrillionaire, when they know damn well that people have different abilities, different backgrounds, and not everybody can be a guerrillionaire. So and also, if
Yeah.
everybody was aiming to be a guerrillionaire, no one would be rich. And secondly, how would you fill the spots that are paid less? And also, people have varying abilities, and there's not enough
Yeah.
money to go around for everybody to be a millionaire. You know what I'm saying? So these
Yeah.
people, yeah. What do you say? I didn't hear you.
And there's other, like, I would say there's other things to think about in
Yes,
life
yes,
besides like doing the right thing, like being
yes,
moral, like being ethical, like I don't know, trying, if you're religious, trying to discern what
yeah,
God wants from your life, and trying to do it,
right,
trying to be something that helps humanity, trying to do something that helps humanity
yes,
instead of the opposite. Like those are worthwhile concerns that don't relate to how do I get laid,
right,
but
right.
these guys, I mean, I guess you're thinking like I don't watch, I don't listen to many of these guys, but it sounds like it's like the fresh and fit type.
Yeah, yeah. That whole
Uh
scene, um,
yeah.
that whole scene. We know the names. We don't have to mention them. I don't think so.
Yeah.
But Fresh and Fit,
I
yeah,
didn't
that's
mean
the
to
one.
name drop. I just was trying to make
Yeah.
sure I was in the ballpark
Oh yeah,
there.
yeah. I don't mind if you name them. I'm just saying you can
Okay.
name anybody you want. My style is that people are probably going to know who I mean. So,
Yeah.
uh,
And you
uh,
mentioned Andrew Tate earlier, but
well, yeah, I did mention
that's
him,
like
but
pretty obvious.
yeah, yeah, but it just seems like self help in the '80s and '90s was more from, let's say, benevolent people who, I don't know, maybe were
Yeah.
kind of snake oily, whatever, like Anthony Robbins or Brian Tracy. But the new self help is just simply berating your audience. I mean, it's literally just
Yeah.
humiliating,
Yeah.
insulting them. Yes, and again, I just wanted to go over how the malignant hypergamy is going on with the other forces. And secondly, also, is that it's very disturbing to see grown men who are, I would say, past what we would call a sexual prime,
Yeah.
whining and ranting and raving and yammering about women all day. It's women, women, women are like, I mean, you and I are talking about women, but we're talking from more of a pro social corrective int
Yeah.
way, whereas these men are getting online and it's the same thing over and over. Monkey branching, hypergamy, in divorce court, they're going to take half your shit
Yeah.
over and over. And also, my view is, and I've asked them underneath some of their posts just for some giggles. I've said, well, according to you, women are this bad. Why are you exhorting men to get women if women are this bad?
Yeah.
It's incongruent. So I'm going to bash a group, but we're going to talk about advice to get this group. It makes no
Yeah.
sense. And I think that this, we've been over that, how this is kind of like a in tandem malignant hypergamy. And
Yeah.
one thing, because this is coming from the disenfranchisement of men, is coming from various directions. It's not just like I said, the womanlessness is, to me, the symptom or comorbidity. So as far as, let's say, men being less industrious and male college campuses being, I think the stat is 60% women, 40% men, that did this happen organically? Like, did women, there are very intelligent women out there, very capable, intelligent women. Did it come from all of a sudden women just becoming, having more opportunity and use the opportunity, or is there
Mhm.
something else going on here that is screwing those ratios? I don't know. Meaning, is it organic, or was it just discrimination? I'm going to say it, discrimination against men. I don't know enough about it. Do you know anything about that?
Well, I mean, I think that when you say, what society says to women today,
Yeah,
because of feminism, you're wonderful the way you are. and you're no matter what you do, you're wonderful, and no matter you can do whatever you want with your body, uh, and it doesn't matter. It's all and you should have fun and well, that's not going to bring out that doesn't bring out the best in women, but that wouldn't bring out the best in anyone,
Right,
right?
right.
If you tell any group, if you indulge any group like that and tell them you're just great the way you are, you don't have to change, you don't have to become better, uh, and your behavior is fine. Whatever you do, if it works for you, that's fine. That's not that's not going to lead to good outcomes. I mean, like you'll still have good women who still practice, who still are virtuous in the midst of all of this squalor.
Yes.
But it's harder. It's harder to do that when you're not encouraged at all to when you're encouraged in the exact opposite direction. But I don't know exactly you're by saying discrimination against men. I'm not sure what you mean. Can you explain?
Well, I don't know if there is. I mean, that's the issue. The issue is that I'm trying to think how this ratio happened, where
Oh,
men are not being.
why there's more lonely men than women?
No, but why are there? Okay, just to put it bluntly, why are there less men in college now than women? And what this is
Oh,
causing, like, yeah, like, sure,
oh
maybe,
yeah,
perhaps you've read what Rob Henderson is publishing recently, that this dynamic of status and men not being as industrious as the women. And
right,
this is also causing a problem because, as you and I know, even if a woman is a high earner, she's going to want a man who is earning higher than her. So
right,
this is making men less attractive to women because they do not have
yeah,
the types of jobs that warrant the salaries that the women
yeah,
are having. Yes.
yes. And working class men are immediately off the just not even a matter of consideration at all, or
Yes. So,
men who
yes.
make a blue collar salary today,
Right.
which due to inflation, it's a different subject, but you used to be able to take care of you used to be able to feed and house a family on a blue collar salary, like
Yes.
a factory worker or
Yeah.
whatever. And that's not the case anymore.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah. So as far as why there are fewer men in college, why women are girls are excelling in academia more than boys are today. I mean, I would think that part of it is just that I think it's I think it is discrimination in the sense that, and maybe indirectly, because we're today it's virtue signaling to be pro woman, but it's not. You're not virtue signaling if you're pro man.
Yes.
You know, and so the messages that we hear, even from people who aren't terribly political or who aren't malicious or in any way, but there's just it's what has been imbibed is you know women are good and should be treated well. Men are suspect and should be told that they need to shape up.
Yes.
And so I think that's like the that there are consequences to that.
Yes.
Um, and maybe that's part of the consequences are boys dropping out of society and not trying and just uh the, the playing video games in your basement, whatever, like the kind of the cliches. I know
Yeah.
they're always they're annoying cliches,
Yeah.
but whatever, the tending more towards that sort of non-striving behavior
Right.
uh is because they're just not they're not encouraged. There's just more. If they're encouraged at all, quote unquote, it's with this kind of you guys need to shape up, this drill sergeant kind of deal,
Right.
which I guess works on some men in certain situations, but generally speaking, if you just go out there and you sense that the culture is hostile to you,
Yes.
then you then it's you don't have as much motivation. Yeah, as you say, it's why should I give back
Right.
to a culture that hates me?
Yes,
So
exactly. And
yeah,
also, you'll find people online saying, again, I don't know, people are thinking in real life, or I mean, real life, the internet is real life. I'm saying
yeah,
it's expressed online now. You don't have the gazillion conversations in real life that offline, I mean, that you do so rapidly on the internet. The communication is so rapid and so abundant. But, people will say, well, men don't need college. Who cares? Just go into the trades. Well, obviously, we need the trades. We need to maintain our infrastructure, um,
yeah,
all that we have, plumbing, steel work,
yeah,
fusing wires together. Yes. So, um, but my view is that, okay, so we're just going to have men who are doing backbreaking labor, but all of male influence and authority, such as in, let's say, the sciences, law, philosophy, all the other areas that shape a society,
yeah.
uh, there's no men there. Men are just going to be these worker slaves, who are
Hmm.
burying their bodies, and it's going to be women in charge only, right? So
Yeah,
you see what I mean, right?
yes.
Yeah. So yeah,
That's not good.
yeah,
That's not good.
yeah. I'm not fond of that at all. And let me see what else I got here. I have here also is that what else do I have? See. So what I was going to speak about, and perhaps we can speak again. I would like to speak to you again, perhaps if we have to
Yeah,
continue.
great.
Yeah, yeah. I like to touch upon so many different like subtopics of it that are piling on men. Actually, is that see? I don't think that I'm not here to whine per se, and there's nothing attractive about to women about whining men, right? So
Yeah,
I noticed that there is a lot of legitimate complaints, and I've expressed my complaints now also, and about what's going on. It's very concerning to me, considering my personal experience as a male, and also I have a son and a daughter who I'm concerned about as well.
yeah,
Um, and just the whole scene of the corruption of education, even some all over, just everything
yeah.
just degenerating. So where am I going with this? Is that I would like to perhaps, and I don't know what kind of influence I can have, but maybe if that that saying a thousand flowers blossom, something, what that kind of saying. Um, if we also spreading these ideas, and I think they were post the red pill. I think that a lot of men just realized like they're not going to be this hot guy with millions of dollars. That
Yeah,
fantasy, it's not happening. So,
right.
my view is that men should talk now, but they should talk in a way where if and when there is a reboot, a renewal, a collapse, and then a rebirth, what can they do besides whine? I mean, there's going to have to be, like I said before, these are things that people think are harsh measures or like Islam. If you have to mention anything that's, let's say, like I said before, okay, the fun's ending, the party's over, we're getting serious now. Cut the shit. We're doing things the old fashioned way. They will say it's like Islam when most of these practices were practiced throughout the West or across all races and ethnicities. What is going to have to be done to get things on track? And it could even be something we're fantasizing about. You see, Dr. Stephen Baskerville, thinks that you only have the course correction of things through law, and that whining about culture is a whole lot of doing nothing. People getting online and saying that this woman is an SLUT, body
Hmm.
count shaming, whining.
Hmm.
The woman's going to take half my stuff. Um,
Yeah,
but everything that came to this, for example, the permission of production of pornography, the availability of contraceptive, prophylactics for women, girls that are young as 13 years old, the authority of the state over one's children, except for one's parents, the lack of a man to protect his family. All these
yeah,
things are going to have to be reversed, not just culture, because culture is just simply people talking and praying that things are going to change. But if you do mention these things, people think that this is so outrageous, but what,
mm,
what what are we going to do? You know what I'm saying? What are young
yeah.
men? two generations from now going to do? You know what I mean? You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, and I don't I have I guess a different perspective about the cultural stuff because I think culture is important, and
Yes, it is.
I I think that there are some heartening signs. I never thought like I during uh when I was young, when I was in my teens or in my early 20s, I didn't think we'd see a time where there'd be this anti-porn movement
Mhm. Yeah.
like we've got among men, like among men saying, get off that, stop watching porn,
Yes.
stop it, and that would be a cool thing. That would be like a
Yeah.
cool trend.
Yeah.
That would never, that would have just been like, oh, these are just a bunch of goody, like fundamentalist Christians who are saying stuff like that.
Right.
And porn is cool. That's what you would think, and the attitude would be in the culture.
Yeah.
Uh, but that's not the case right now. There's so much energy behind. There's so much anger at the pornography industry. Even as, of course, people are still enslaved to, people are still addicted, and people, I guess get on OnlyFans. I can't even conceive of that
Yeah, me
level
neither. Yes. Yeah.
of patheticness, really.
Yes.
Where, but it exists apparently. But there's been such a backlash against. I mean, let's just stick with that as like there are other hopeful signs, but that's something I never thought I'd see, like cool guys, like saying get off the porn, cut it out with that shit. That's bad.
Yeah.
It's bad for you.
Yeah.
So that's a sign that like there's something in the culture that's like I think there are hopeful signs in the culture that there are, but uh but it's not like I'm saying I mean, I don't know what the future holds.
Yeah.
um but I think that um I think it's reductive. I don't know if this person you're talking about, this writer that you enjoy, that you've been talking about, who says we've got to change the laws. I don't know if if he's saying just like any talk about the culture is just whining. I mean, I think there's a way to denounce what's happening in the culture. There's a way to there's a way to talk about the culture that's entertaining.
Yeah.
Like there's a way to put down degeneracy, uh, to make fun of degeneracy that's entertaining and like makes people laugh uh and is sort of a is less of a or things are so
Yeah.
terrible,
Right. Right. Right.
but more of a just like a uh like there's a way to denounce it, that's and a way to just stick it to the all of this bad stuff, all these people doing all these bad things and all these terrible trends, that still manages to be entertaining. Like I think there's some comedians out there who are like that now. Who uh like have you seen the Boys Cast?
Um, actually, no, no, I haven't heard of that one.
Okay. Um, yeah, I mean that's just one example of like some they're two guys, and I can't remember what their names are, but one of them you've probably seen it. One of them, like he's 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 a lot of places on the internet. He does man on the street interviews a lot, and is very he's like he's maybe in his early 30s. Can't think of his name, but anyway, like that's if you listen to that podcast, these are two comedians and they're having a blast, uh but they're laughing at all the stuff, like they're making fun of all the stuff that needs to be made fun of,
Yeah.
and and I think that's the way to go. Like, uh, like to be of good cheer and to, I guess it takes having some kind of optimism or some kind of faith or some idea that things will work out eventually. Which I don't know where that come. Like, how do you get people to stop feeling despair? Like, I think that's something that you know it's in some ways out of our hands, or
Yeah,
um,
right. Well,
but I think that addressing the culture in a way that is positive in the sense that it's you're not just a gloomy Gus, you're not just like uh, drawing attention to bad things and making everybody depressed and miserable, but you're drawing attention to bad things and making fun of the things that need to be made fun of, and laughing at it, and you know that's sort of like, I think that's the way to go, and
yeah,
that's, I guess, what I try to do. I don't know how successful I am, but like I try to in my commentary on things, I try to uh, talk about the the negative trends, but in a way that uh, like I'm very anti-black pill,
yeah,
and there's nothing to me worse than the so-called black pill, and uh, so yeah, so I think the answer to that is to be of good cheer and to have fun, and to I think when you're be funny if that's where your talents lie, or just be insightful in other ways, uh or and like, but ultimately have you know the the ultimate aim is to uplift the culture,
right.
um
Yes,
rhetorically, or otherwise. I think that's the way to. I would argue that's the way to go in addressing cultural issues, and I would say there are some positive signs, in the culture,
yeah,
in the midst of so
right.
much terrible stuff.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with that. I think the cultural issue is important, but I mean, obviously, the divorce regime, which is one of the most sinister things that I've ever learned about, and
Yeah,
is also a primer in wrecking society and giving us these
yeah,
social deviances. That to me, that has to change. You can't wreck men's lives because some woman wants to leave him. I mean, not only is
yeah,
it, for example, not just assets, but professional license revoked, cars impounded,
yeah, yeah,
jail. Yeah, you probably know simply just like devilish stuff I've heard of, and
yeah.
yeah,
It's the divorce rate, as they call it.
yeah. It goes beyond just money. There's a reason why family law is a very almost dangerous for people who even practice it, actually, because of what happens. And
Oh, yeah.
one thing about the black pill I wanted to ask you is that, again, uh I'm not into bragging of any sorts. I don't think I'm very against it, but sometimes I've actually thought to myself, because like when people say, and I could be out of touch because I'm a 45-year-old man, it's 2025. When I was younger and looking for a woman, it was a different scene. Maybe up until I met my wife when I was, let's say, was about around 30. And before that, I was actually indulging in some, I would call it sexual hedonism with the
Mhm.
dating websites, right? And I admit to that. And I don't think that's cool or funny or the right thing to do. Maybe that is
Mhm.
hypocritical by me saying that, but I think that what happened is that, I'm not going to lie here. I do believe that we need monogamy, and if I knew then what I know now, that stereotypical statement. I mean,
Yeah,
the cliche statement. If I knew this, blah blah blah. Um, I don't think I would not have done that. But I say to myself, are the apps that brutal? Meaning that, I looked better. I had more, I had more hair. I didn't have a
Hmm.
graying beard when I was 20 something years old.
Yeah.
And I met a lot of women and, some interesting times. And I'm not going to not deny this, that even though I'm a proponent of monogamy, I'm not going to say that screwing a lot of women is not thrilling. I,
No, of course. Yeah.
yeah, I could say that monogamy is beneficial for me, while at the same time saying, well, yeah, if you screw a lot of women, it could be very exciting, right? But
Yeah. I mean, yeah. I mean, it's like there's trade-offs to
yes,
everything. It's like,
right,
so you have to, you gain with monogamy, what you gain is better than what you lose, but you're still
right.
losing something.
Yes. And I also, after a while, I don't think it was for me because it just felt like, even like kind of like I creeped myself out almost, meaning it didn't
Yeah.
feel right. Like it was just odd. And like, some of these scenarios, I'm not going, again, no details, were kind of like what I would call porn come to life. And I'm
Yeah.
not saying in a bragging way. So at the moment, it feels like, oh my God, is this happening? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And this
Right.
is all I've been thinking about. And I
Yeah.
wanted this to happen. You know what I'm saying?
Which is
But
great.
yeah, yeah, exactly. Right. But it doesn't mean to lead to anything productive. And
Yeah.
it just wastes and wastes your time, one's time, and stalls for actually family formation. And, um, but I'm thinking to myself, are the black pillars really right in saying that you have to be top 10%? Like, again, I
Yeah.
think that I am like, I don't know, ordinary or average looking. I mean, my physique is not ordinary, definitely not, even though I don't lift in the same way that I once did. I don't look like some, maybe the avatar on Substack, which you've seen. But yeah, the body is, I'm not going to brag above average. People can tell I work out, but I'm not a
Yeah.
gorgeous man, and I'm only 5'10". I'm not loaded. I'm not driving a Bugatti. And when I go out in public, sometimes, I'm not turning heads. Women are
Yeah.
not being breathtaking, but I have women strike up conversation. I'm not going to say that every
Yeah.
woman strikes up a conversation with me is sexually interested, but there are times when I know they are. For example,
Yeah.
like I've been going to this Starbucks recently, didn't even know where my job was. I go in there, there's this very pretty 20 something year old woman there, and I could just tell. I said to
Hmm.
myself one day, I said, the woman is going to start a conversation one day. I could tell by the way she's looking at me, getting
Yeah.
giggly kind of. And then 1 or 2 days after I said she's going to start a conversation, she started a conversation. And she
Hmm.
said, yeah, she said, again, a cliche line, oh, it's getting hot out, right? Right. So,
Yeah.
and then even at the gym, I've had women strike up conversation. And even when I was at a bar, I said to myself that I'll have a guys night out, I'll go to a bar. I'm not going to do anything per se, but it'd be interesting if I even, like, are these guys really saying it's that difficult for a woman to talk to you? And lo and behold, there's a woman that was looking at my friend and I went to the bar, not to talk to her. I'm a faithful man. I'm not hitting on other women.
Yeah.
The woman said, hello, how are you? Right. I could just tell
Yeah.
she was in a type of conversation. Right. So
Yeah.
I'm like, is it, I'm regular.
Yeah.
If it's 10% of men, how am I getting women talking to me on the street when these guys are saying that you are
Mhm.
invisible? Is it really that bad? Because again,
Mhm.
I'm being realistic. I'm not bragging here. I'm regular.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. No, yeah, I hear you. I hear what you're saying.
Yeah.
Um, that's a good question. Like, is it different among the younger generation or not? Are they just, is it just sort of like, I would say there probably is some exaggeration of how bad things are, like as far as like I think the broad outlines of the critique of the state of things can be true, while it, in reality it's, there are more exceptions to the rule than the black pillar types would ever admit. They would
Right.
they would never think that guys like me or you, would that women would ever be interested in us. And we
Yes.
know,
Yeah.
that without bragging or anything, we know that's not the case. So
Right. I mean, again, I also, I mean, again, not a brag. even in high school, and this relates to it also because I think that a lot of this is not a lot, some of it is warped thinking because being that I had such low self esteem in high school, I couldn't even read if a woman liked me, meaning that on my
Yeah.
first week of my senior year in high school, this very pretty Greek woman, I remember actually where I was because I was like so eager to finally meet a woman. So she goes to her friend and whispers in her friend's ear while the friend is looking at me, and she's looking at me also. And then the friend comes over to me and said, "Hi, what's your name?" I said, "Bradley." She said, "Oh, do you have a girlfriend?" And in my head, I said to myself, "Well, that girl just asked this girl to ask me if I had a girlfriend, right?" So
Yeah.
what happens is there's another guy who I became friends with who beat me to it because he had a better self image than I did. And he
Yeah.
also came from money and probably felt better about himself and was
Right.
certainly more socially adroit than I was. So this woman
Yeah.
liked me. She got scooped up, right? And she
Yeah.
actually told one of my friends, and she didn't even know me from a hole in the wall. All I said was hi and bye. And she told one of my friends one time, she says, Bradley could have a girlfriend but he acts like he can't. And when I told my psychologist that, he made a joke. He said, "She sounds like a better psychologist than I am, right?" Because I would go
Oh,
to him and say, "There has to be something wrong with me, doctor.
yeah.
There's something wrong. I don't know what it is. Uh, Maybe
Yeah.
I can't pinpoint it." He says, "Look, Bradley." He says, "The only thing that is wrong is you're your own worst enemy. There's nothing
Yeah.
fundamentally wrong with you." And he actually saw what we would call incels. Now he says, "Look," he said, "Look, there are some men who I can't help them, and I'm not going to bullshit them either. They're not getting a woman." You know what I'm saying? So he
Yeah.
said, "In your case, you can, right?"
Yeah.
So this woman saw something in me that was not right, and it wasn't right. It was severe depression and a low self-image, right? So
Mhm.
even the friend I told you about before, who we're going to do a double date with next week, she said, um, even when we were like chatting on Instagram, she said, you were such a cute kid with your blonde hair. You seem very friendly, but it seemed like you didn't want to talk to me. And I said, it doesn't seem like you wanted to talk to me, right? So,
Yeah.
all these things of I could have, if I wanted to be a pig, so to
Yeah.
speak, I could have been a little bit of a
Right.
sexual pig, right? And even I got friends with some even other people that were not the best people to hang around with, but they liked me. And there was this unsupervised house, and one of my friends is going to know this if he watches this. It was just the house that no parent would want their kids in, right? It was just
Yeah.
simply just debauchery. When I say tossed around, I
It is.
mean that. You know what I'm saying? Just
Yeah.
it was a weird, like,
I bet hygienically it wasn't that. It was not
right,
that. It
right.
was not top tier.
Right, right. And I
It was
would go there
different.
sometimes also, and I'm not going to share details that, I had a chance amongst these very loose women there to
Yeah.
partake in some of this, right? But I didn't.
Yeah.
I didn't feel comfortable, right? So
Yeah.
these men who are black pilled, I'm sure they would say, "Oh yeah, he's buff, but everything about him, what else? He's not top 10%. His
Yeah.
what I don't have
Yeah.
the hunter eyes. I do not have a 6 foot, I'm not 6 foot, right?
Yeah.
So
They're very precise and they're very specific about
right,
the visual qualities that you have to
right,
have.
right.
Yeah.
So even at my job, and I'm going to end with these examples. I'm just storing this out there because I'm trying to think of how extreme they are. I've had women at my
Yeah.
job also who've said things flagrantly sometimes. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So I don't have to say it, but there's opportunity there if I were a sexual pig and unfaithful to do something, but I'm not
Yeah.
going to. So
Yeah.
uh, uh, there has to be some exaggeration, as you said. It's gone
Yeah.
too far, I think. You know what I mean?
Yeah. It's a product of like, well, I mean, when you're in despair, you just when and it's funny to hear myself talking this way because I hated, I was, I guess in some ways like you, I was depressed a lot, and
Yeah.
I sort of was against this whole look on the bright side, or if you just think you're a loser, then that's all you'll ever be. I rolled my eyes at people who said stuff like that, but there's some truth to the fact that if you carry yourself a certain way, or uh, you know, it's the truth is in the middle, right?
Right, 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 right.
It's not like what the corny people say about you're fine. You just need to have more confidence. But it's also not what the black pillars say. It's where if you're just it's over for you
Yes. Yeah,
if you're
right.
not if you're not 6'4" and gorgeous.
Yeah, right. Exactly. Because I mean, I go outside of my house, and again, I don't want to sound like a boomer Gen Xer, because the boomer Gen X line sometimes is like, I go out of my house, all I see. People will say that online and offline. They'll say, all I see, all the
Yeah,
women in my young women in my family, they all have great husbands. All the men in my family, they all have advanced degrees and they're making 150,000. They all have wives who are good women. You know what I'm saying?
yeah.
I don't like that stuff. You know what I mean? But
That's what the guy online, the person online who you were critical of earlier was saying, right? The
yeah.
insult, the
Oh,
one who was
yes,
being
yes.
insulting.
Yeah, exactly. Yes. Well, all he sees. Again,
Yeah,
I don't want to say that all I see outside, because in American society today, all I see is certainly not good, right?
yeah,
So, but then again, I do see some men. Again, I'm not like this black pillar who goes around like looking at men's body. I notice
yeah,
it. I notice the person, but I don't like sit there and analyze to that degree. Well, does he have the hunter eyes, the perfect jaw? Does he
yeah,
have a six pack? So but I've seen men who I don't know how else to say this, who are a little schlubby, so to speak, right? And then
yeah,
they're in the gym, they're not killing themselves like I am. You know what I'm saying? I'm like,
yeah,
which they don't have to. I kill myself because I want to. I'm not
yeah,
going to be like, one of these red pillars that says, you got to kill yourself. It's like, whatever. So
yeah,
anyway, I'll see a guy, I see a woman there who's attractive. After a while, I was like, oh, they're together. I'll see them. I say, oh, they're
yeah,
together. I'm like, it's kind of a looks mismatch, but good for him. You know what I'm saying?
yeah,
So I see this all the time. And again, I think this is like the way that inceldom is a comorbidity or a symptom of a broken society. I also
yeah,
think that inceldom is also a comorbidity of a certain avatar of a person. Not in all cases, but in many cases. For example, if one has a family that keeps on moving, and the boy cannot or young man cannot establish a social circle, if there is a broken home and he has depression from this, or he never saw healthy relationships in front of his own eyes like I didn't, right? um,
yeah,
so in a sense, yeah, I do think that some improving is in order. Now, did I want to be in a position where I have to try hard? I have to overcome certain uh, abnormalities. No, I didn't want to do that. But in some cases, like, what was I going to do? Or what are some other people going to do if they don't have the perfect scenario of the perfect home life?
yeah,
It can work to a degree if you do so-called improve to a degree in some cases. It's like,
yeah,
and I do think that a lot of the times, because this sort of happened to me, meaning where I had friends in high school, but like I said, it was almost like getting near social groups where I was in there, but I didn't really fit the group. I mean, these men or women liked having me around, but I wasn't doing drugs. I was not a loudmouth. So the people would like to have me around, but I
yeah,
wasn't fitting that in. If you're around a bunch of loudmouths and people that have a deviant tendency, and you might be in the social circle thinking that this is how I'll get in here. I'll meet a girlfriend for being kind of popular. The women
yeah,
already see that you're not the dominant guy in that group, and they do notice this very easily, right? So,
right.
but not having a social circle at all is very bad. So
Mhm.
I think you see what I'm trying to say here, that it is sometimes a symptom of something else, not just that the person is not 6'2"
Yeah,
and a millionaire.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. There's there. Yeah, I mean, I don't know if I've ever phrased it quite like this, but
yeah,
I would agree with you. I mean, I don't, I think it's not, I've never been like, I've never tried to go to a black pillar and say, oh, come on, it's not that bad.
right.
I bet you could find a girlfriend, because that just doesn't seem like that just seems like,
Yeah,
um,
right.
that's just giving them exactly the line that they are expecting to hear, and that they'll just wave off. And I don't want to, and I don't even know, these are people I don't like. Somebody I'm just talking to online, I'm not going to assume anything about
Yeah,
what they can do and what they can't do. But I think that, yeah, I think it's more complicated. There are more exceptions to the rule. the rules are, are real. They're generally speaking real, but
Yes.
there are exceptions to the rules. There are women who find unusual things attractive for
Yes.
whatever reason. Some women who talk about liking dad bods. You
Yeah.
know, like that's like that's actually like that seems very counterintuitive. But I
Right.
guess in a way it's not. Like if like if you have a good relationship with your dad,
Right.
uh, then then it kind of makes sense that that you would be drawn to a guy with a dad bod or whatever.
Right.
Um, so yeah, it's not as there aren't hard and fast rules, and yeah, it's not just a categorical thing. It's more of an art than a science.
Yes.
The
Yeah.
whole attraction thing.
Right, exactly. And yeah, I agree with you. And but what I think that also is happening here also is the atomization of society also, meaning that, amongst the people that I knew in my 20s and late teens is that, there's this whole pressure on, I'm sure you see it all over the place, YouTube, social media, of this pressure for men to approach, and men aren't approaching anymore.
Yeah,
So and so percentage of men are not approaching, but this wasn't really a approach that people had, I noticed in the 90s or even early aughts, meaning that, like I used the word comorbidity or symptom, that's from another YouTuber also. Wasn't my way of phrasing it, but I think it's a very good way of putting it. There also is this problem amongst in this atomization is that back then men did not form, they don't even form them now, meaning that couples were not formed from some guy approaching a stranger woman, meaning amongst these
yeah,
social cliques that I remember, or like I said, a few gangs also as well, and also just from the town introductions, being around people, like the men knew the women already. It wasn't a
yeah,
stranger going to a woman and approaching. And also like another YouTuber that is has somewhat of a following, but he stopped posting. His YouTube channel was called Held by the Dashboard Light. He had a small following.
yeah.
Yeah,
I remember. I know him, and he was very much a black pillar, right?
yeah, right, right. But he's very intelligent, and he would say things that
Hmm.
are very profound. And he one time I think he said that you're not supposed to meet people, you're supposed to know people. And I said to myself, well, gee, what does that mean? And I said, yeah, that's kind of true. If you speak to
Hmm.
many Gen Xers or even maybe some millennials or actually most
Yeah.
couples, I say most couples, and you ask them how they met, they didn't meet from a stranger man approaching a stranger woman. If you ask them how they met, they
Hmm.
say through friends. We lived in the
Right.
same town. I was at a party, his friends were
Yeah.
there, my friends were there, at work, or I knew him from high school and I bumped into him years later there, and we struck a conversation, and that was it. Or I kept on seeing the guy
Yeah.
at the gym. I saw him at the gym, and then I saw him at the bar, and we kept on seeing each other. Right? What
Yeah.
this whole thing of men not approaching is bullshit. I think. I mean, you can do it,
Mm.
but it's not. It's likely not going to work. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. I don't think it's a. I don't. I'm not against it. I think you should do
Yeah.
whatever you feel inspired to do. But yeah, I don't think it's something you should force yourself to do.
Right. Yes. But I mean, I think that, for example, someone like me, like if something awful happened, or if I were, if I were a single man,
Yeah.
now as like mid 40s, I actually would do that if there were the so-called indicators of interest. You know what I'm saying? Like I told you
Sure.
about in the Starbucks or somewhere else, like in the gym. I would
Yeah.
do that. I would approach because, well, I would use dating apps. I would use approaching. Well, what else am I going to do? People who come into my work, people who visit my job, I would use various opportunities. I'm not
Sure.
against the approaching, but I think that it's lame when people online or certain, even some of the bigger figures like Scott Galloway, Jordan Peterson, the big
Yeah.
talking heads say men aren't approaching. Well, I feel like asking them, did you approach your wife? Did you just see a
Right.
woman on the street and say, ha, do some cold approach game? None of
Yeah.
them did that. You know what I mean? So
It's
I'm not
not. It's
against,
not really natural I mean, it's not. It's like it's weird to just go up to a
yeah,
stranger and start. and hand them a line, it's gonna be a line. It's gonna be some kind of line, and maybe
Right,
it's a good line, maybe it's a
right.
but yeah, it's not. It's not. It shouldn't be the norm. Like it shouldn't be expected.
Yeah, right.
Uh,
See, right. Like I would do it, like I said, out and about. If I'm out and about somewhere and
yeah,
a woman is looking at me or starting
yeah,
conversation, then I would do it. But I wouldn't go out and say to myself, I'm going to do 20 cold approaches today.
yeah,
I'm going to approach someone today. I would do it as it came. You know what I mean? So,
yeah.
and let me see if I touched upon everything here. Um, I think we've almost gone over everything that I wanted to touch upon, but to close it out, I would also like to go about discussing some, I guess, conservative or right wing stuff. For example, well, two things like that, touching upon this so-called
Mhm.
right wing or conservative or tradcon type of thing. Um, you know, I have seen also some of these people like uh, some people think that the right or wing or conservative or Republican, side of things. I'm not really into politics at this point. I think that no politician is going to rearrange America the way it's supposed to be. So I stay out of left wing versus right wing discourse. I just don't care about that anymore because again, I don't vote. This
Yeah,
the ship has sailed. It's done. So
yeah,
unless it's some type of, like I said before, some type of renewal, a collapse, and a rebirth. But many people think that the right wing or conservative area represents family values and tradition. But if you look at the conservatives or Republicans, like let's say Elon Musk, who's not a politician, Trump, some of the big talking
hmm,
heads, and you find out about them, they are many of them philanderers. They
yeah,
are through multiple divorces. They make single mommies. So
yeah,
I find this very incongruent. And then
yeah.
many right wing men look upon their lecherous behavior and praise it as if they're some type of winners, these people. Well, they're winners
Yeah,
financially. Yeah. So
yeah.
isn't this just a bunch of crap? I mean, I don't, and also, do any right wingers actually do anything about family court? Is Trump going to actually enforce
Hmm.
suitable family policies? No, he hasn't. So,
Yeah.
and people say all these men, even the Manosphereans, they went to vote for Trump. Um, I don't see the right wing doing any favors for men, not practically speaking.
Uh-huh.
What do you think? If you think anything,
Ye- Well, if your point is that right wing celebrities are often lead scummy personal lives.
it's
Uh,
public. Yeah, yeah, it's not really personal. Yeah, yeah, yeah,
yeah. Personal lives that are well known. Like like
yeah,
like it's not even a secret.
yeah,
Like our president
yeah.
and lots of other. I mean, even somebody like I can't think of his name right now. The commentator. He was like he was a talk radio guy, like sort of a second tier Rush Limbaugh, Sean Hannity.
Oh,
Like
yeah, yeah,
he was a big Catholic, and then he left his wife and got with somebody else younger, I think. Um, and like there are plenty of examples of that.
right.
And I don't know, is it sort of a like they don't practice what they preach, but that doesn't mean what they preach is bad.
Yeah,
I don't. I mean, I
I
can't.
guess so.
Yeah, I guess that's what I would say. That like the fact that hypocrisy that people are hypocrites doesn't mean that virtue is wrong. I mean, it doesn't
Right,
doesn't doesn't mean it says something bad about the hypocritical people. It doesn't say something bad about the values that they've hypocritically violated.
right, exactly. Yes, I mean, yeah, I agree with that. I just find the entire thing incongruent that men are turning to that. I'm not saying who to vote for. Again, I don't vote for whoever you
Yeah,
want. I don't care. You know what I'm saying? But
yeah,
I just think it's just incongruent that some of these people thought that these people are going to improve a lot of men, and none of them are going to hammer down on family court or change the divorce regime. Um, uh,
right. That
And
doesn't seem like it's the top of, it doesn't seem like it's anywhere near reforming family court doesn't seem like it's an issue with any politician that I can think of.
right now, that's what disheartens me because there are serious matters taking place across the world. Matters in the Middle East, the Ukraine, Russia war. These things are important, but you keep on hearing about these things like the economy, the subjects I just mentioned, and there
Mhm.
really is no. Maybe I'm not paying attention enough. There's no commentary about fixing everyday life here. You know what I'm saying? There's no commentary about
Mhm.
improving family life. It doesn't it, like for people like me and you. What is going on here? Why would I vote for these
Mhm.
people if I don't hear anything from them that is going to affect my life at all? You know what I mean?
Mhm.
And
Yeah, I get what you're saying. I don't vote either. I've got my
yeah,
own reason for
right,
not voting.
yeah. And
But
then go ahead.
yeah,
Well,
but I just I definitely understand what you're saying.
yeah, and then Trump and Elon Musk were going for this idea. Maybe they are still going for it. It has not passed through. I don't think it's going to pass through. Of throwing $5,000 at single mother, $5,000 for babies to be for each baby or something like that. Like if a woman has a baby, she's going to get $5,000 in aid. Well, $5,000 in aid is not going to do anything for anybody, really. I mean, to
Yeah.
I'm sure
I hadn't heard about
you yeah you have kids. $5,000 might not even cover one night in a hospital plus the birth. I mean,
that.
if you tack on pain medication, IV fluids, a possible
Yeah,
C-section, a specialist walks in the room for 5 minutes. And you see that on the bill for over $1,000. You know what I'm saying? Or you see that
yeah,
IV fluids cost God knows much. What is
yeah,
$5,000 going to do? And what it would do is incentivize the most irresponsible people to do this, not
right.
incentivize a woman who already has things together financially to begin with. So these are very limp-wristed
Yeah,
measures, and also if these people are going to, let's say, oh, this is a good one to actually discuss before we part ways. Is that the fertility crisis? Mean that a lot of them,
yeah,
countries are concerned about their fertility rates, the replacement rates or lack
yeah,
of. But
right.
none of these people, my question is, well, how do you raise the fertility if the average guy can't get a date? Is a politician going to look
Yeah,
into that? You know what I'm saying? So
yeah.
they're 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 talking about this, and again, it always goes back to me to be repetitious to a degree. Man can't
Mhm.
get date. You're not getting babies from the situation. And also, if women are implored to put work above everything else, whether by necessity or interest, and I'm not saying
Mhm.
women shouldn't work. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying if they are uh, pressured or if work is, again, I don't mind anybody working. I'm just saying that if work is the foremost aim, well, the other things are going to take a back seat. Rather than, let's say, for example, if we had women pursuing careers, but they pursue the career after the children are, born or have, you know, maybe like till the preteens. The woman had
Yeah,
babies, then the woman goes back maybe at 30 years old, gets her degree later in life.
yeah,
After that's done, or a woman studying for something, a profession, getting a profession that could be done part time. Like if you, let's say, a healthcare worker, like a nurse, there's always flexible hours for occupational therapists, physical therapists, nurses. That could be, my wife's a hairstylist, so she worked part time when the first 3 years of both kids' lives. They're older than that now, so if we're not
mhm.
encouraging those kinds of plans, and boomer dads are also telling the women that this is their foremost priority, that you should be independent of men, there's no way to raise the
Yeah,
fertility rate. And also what I noticed also about some guys, like he brought up a good point that I actually believe is true, held by the dashboard light. Amongst the other smart things, he said that a lot of boomer dads, they would tell, or maybe are still telling, the women to pursue careers above all else. And also, I don't know if this is true or not. It's funny, but it's not
mhm,
funny. It's not funny in a good way. It's funny because most people don't say this. Is that
mhm.
one guy said? I think that, not sure if Hell said it, but some guy that he is recognized by said that a lot of the boomer mothers would push the women into careers, their young daughters into careers, because they know that they didn't really like their husbands in the first place. So they're kind of saying, look, don't do what I did. Don't go for this schlub I had for a
Yeah,
husband. This is kind of like a, helping move in the wrong direction.
maybe. Yeah. Well, um, especially like I think feminism really took root with a lot of boomer women, and so a lot of them probably resent their husbands,
Yeah,
because of feminism and yeah, I think there are different reasons why people encourage others to do give people why people give other people bad advice,
right,
because of they're thinking of themselves and wanting to, like,
right,
they're living vicariously through this other person who gets to do to do what they didn't get to do, or gets to avoid doing what they uh, regret doing.
yeah,
I would say that all of these trends of it's all I would argue it's all about the depopulation agenda, which
yeah,
I know that's taking things in a different direction. We're trying to wrap up
yeah,
here,
yeah, exactly,
but
yeah. So yeah,
but
but
that's like, as far when you talk about for low fertility rates and encouraging women to wait until they to work until they marry, and I tend to think it's the ones at the top who are encouraging this behavior. It's part of the depopulation agenda.
yeah,
Everything that gets advanced is it has the whether it's homosexuality, transgenderism, uh, or uh, or the telling women to wait to marry, or the erosion of monogamy. It all has that general effect of I think of depopulating. These are trends that tend to lead to depopulation. Um,
yeah.
so yeah, but I don't know if that covers what you were saying or not.
No, it goes with it, yes. Because even Mary Eberstadt, she was on the Chris Williamson show, and Chris Williamson
Right.
is one of those guys who takes interest in the topics we're talking about. But
Yeah.
I'm fond of much of what he says, but some of it I can't really get. Like, maybe he's just having an open forum and letting people talk, and he does agree with them. But I, well, whatever. Actually, I agree with most of what he says, and some of the stuff I said that no, I'm not fond of. But anyway,
Mhm.
that's like with everybody probably. But anyway, but Mary Eberstadt put it succinctly. She said that the sexual revolution is a revolution of human deletion. So yeah,
Mhm.
I agree with that wholeheartedly, and it dovetails with what you're saying. And
Yeah.
it's kind of funny that what we're seeing here also is that it's kind of like we also do have a culture of like infantilization, meaning that people think that if you say about women that, oh yeah, sure, women could have, it's a fine age for a woman to have children in their early 20s, you know what I'm saying? And
Mhm.
they'll look at you like you're nuts. Like,
Yeah.
what do you mean? Like,
Right.
like my grandmother had
You're robbing a woman of her joy,
yeah, yeah, but
to enjoy the flower of her youth
yeah,
by having
or it almost seems as if they're looking or reacting as if they think you're creepy by saying that. Like,
yeah, creepy. They do try to shame you by calling you creepy.
yeah, but
uh, and saying anything about youth, you know, if yeah, it's especially when you get older. I'm older than you, and
yeah,
like the kind of the kind of uh, uh yeah, it's that's something that's I'm definitely against you know uh being with anyone underage. I'm
oh
not
yeah, of
I'm
course,
not
yeah, of
that,
course, yes,
but I think you can say 21's a fine time to have children, and that's not
yes,
that's
exactly. But
that's nothing creepy about
right,
that.
right, but it's incongruent because if some college campuses are going to be hotbeds of sexual debauchery and hooking up,
Yeah,
so okay, so you could have a lot of sex at that age and
yeah,
have boyfriend after boyfriend, but somehow procreating with a man is now weird. What am I not
Yeah,
getting about this? This is
yeah. You're
yeah.
old enough to have sex, but children are, is that's like at least a decade away,
Yeah, so you
right?
have to, yeah, so you have to, do all these things to overcome nature, you know, uh, birth control, there has to be the
Right.
use of condoms by the man, but so
Yeah.
you have to figure this out how so you can have pleasure, but no responsibility. So,
Yeah. Contraception and especially the pill. That's another
yeah,
big part of the depopulation agenda.
yeah, exactly. And then also what's interesting also is that, like I said before, is that the red pill so-called self-improvement wing or area or space or whatever, they
So,
also do this to men. Also, I've noticed is that they sell this notion that what I call the revenge of the silver fox, meaning like,
yeah.
you should not settle down now with a woman. You have to wait till you're 40 and stockpile money and
Yeah.
have a nice 401k saved and all these toys and trinkets and motorcycles and boats, and
Yeah.
you too will return as a silver fox, and all the 22-year-old honeys will just be you'll be drowning in honeys. You know what I'm saying? So
Yeah.
yeah, but most men are not gonna do that because they can't. And secondly, why would someone? I don't know why someone would want to do that.
Yeah.
So when are you going to raise these kids then? And also, I don't like that. I'll just throw this in there. I don't like that whole thing of like, you got to improve yourself. You got to improve yourself over the course of 10 to 20 decades and stockpile all this money and accrue
Yeah.
all these adult toys when there are men who didn't improve themselves who have more sexual leverage than these
Yeah.
red pill madmen. Yes. Like,
Yeah. There are plenty of men who have no problem with getting with women who desperately need to improve themselves.
yes,
You know,
yeah,
who are going to hell if
yes,
they die
yeah.
if they die
Because
today.
right, because one thing I want to get clear, and then we'll wrap it up, is that I said things about the black pills, but I don't like. I'm also realistic. I don't deny anything that a black pillar. Again, I think
Yeah.
that's exaggerated to a degree. Meaning, I don't think it's 10%. Meaning that if you're not 10%, you are finished. We already went over that.
It's
That's
over. Yeah.
exaggeration, I believe. But there's truth to the trend, though. And also, I'm not going to deny that again, some of the most deviant men in society attract a lot of women. There is a reason why the most disgusting criminals receive literally thousands of romance letters through the
Yeah.
mail. So,
Yeah.
especially like I like the essay by Ryder Devlin called "The Question of Female Masochism," where he discusses this, and also the other essay by him called "Sexual Atavism in the West: Back to Africa," where both of them kind of discuss this kind of matriarchal mating where women are free to do as they please. And it's all, again, not all women, we got to say that,
Right.
but there is a trend for it to become, like you said, more primitive, and the more deviant, brutal men wind up not monopolizing all women, but a great deal of women. And these men would have been dealt with in previous times and just wouldn't be able to come into the orbit of women. So,
Yeah.
yeah. So again, I don't deny any of these points. But yeah, I guess we'll wrap it up. And before you go, I saw that you had some discussions with some other interesting people. Like I think that you had discussions with I think I listened to this years ago. You had a discussion with Nowicki.
Yes.
Yeah, and then you had the discussion with MGTOW chats.
I've talked to MGTOW chats a few times. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I'm not saying like I'm putting pressure on anybody, but like I wouldn't mind, if one day having a group discussion, if you're interested in that, or meeting some new people and talking to them, because I plan on
Yeah.
having this thing going. If you ever want to do that, I'll be open to that. If you want to have another conversation with me.
Yeah. No, that sounds good. I like I think you would I think MGTOW chats would be definitely interested in I could see you having a successful podcast or whatever with the MGTOW chats
Yeah.
podcast for sure.
Yeah.
Nama seems to be out of the game right now.
Okay.
She's sort of gone dark.
I see.
She had an interesting thing. She had her podcast Incel was a really interesting um, forum that she had going for a couple years. but I don't really know. I don't know what she's up to these days, but she seems to not be up. She seems to be offline, or for whatever reason,
Yeah, I see.
maybe just personal reasons or whatever.
Yeah, I listened to some of those episodes that she had about incels, and that's I also saw your episode with her. I believe
Yeah,
I did listen to the entire thing years ago. That's yeah, what I remember.
yeah.
But yeah, so I'm gonna like I said, like I'm like new to this stuff. I'm gonna figure out how, I'm gonna upload this to YouTube. Is there a way that I was thinking that did you record? Is there a way that I'm this silly with the Zoom actually? You didn't have a chance to record this either, right?
I didn't. No, I didn't push
Okay.
record. No, I'm sorry. I don't know. I don't really know. I'm so retarded when it comes to
Yeah.
technological stuff. I don't know if I'd be able to. I'd
Okay.
probably end up messing it up.
Okay.
So um I don't know. Do you want to check to make sure you got it? You got
Oh yeah.
everything? Or?
No, no, it is recording now. So
Okay.
when I press stop on when I leave it, it's gonna
Okay.
give me the MP4 file to upload to YouTube. I might not do that. I don't think I'm gonna do it tonight. I might want to make like a again, I'm like a kind of a dunce with the technology so far. I might want to make
Yeah.
a nice avatar or something like this for this, or maybe I'll
Okay.
just put a screenshot where I'm smiling above with your with your
Okay.
picture below it. You know what I'm saying? I might have
Okay.
someone, yeah, I might have someone make an avatar for me. So, but
Okay.
when it's up, I'll tell you when it's up because I was thinking that. I mean, maybe there's a way to download it where maybe you can have the file and put it on your channel if you want. I'm open with
I
that if
will
you want.
definitely. I'll definitely link to it. I'll
Okay.
link to it on my Substack page, and I'll link to it on my YouTube
Oh, thank
page.
you. Yeah, thanks. So
So,
probably by the end of the week, I'll have it up.
okay, great. I really enjoyed that. I didn't know what it was since I didn't know you from Adam. I didn't know how this was going to go, but I really enjoyed it.
Oh, yeah, yeah, I mean, yeah, but I kind of, well, I kind of knew you because I was following you for several years, and I
Right.
really feel like, I'm not one to flatter people, but I really thought it was awesome. Like when I got in contact with you, I said, "Would this guy give me like a talk?" And he's kind of, and like maybe he would, maybe he wouldn't, and I'm like, "Oh, he did respond." You know what I'm saying? And just to share this
Yeah.
with you, just for shits and giggles, is that what's funny is that my wife knows about my life. You know what I'm saying? And
Mhm.
again, I mean this in the best way. I'm a fan of yours. I like your books, right? But
Yeah.
my wife kind of knows like a little bit of my little, well, sob story is legitimate or maybe whatever, right? And
Yeah. Sure.
I go against the rule. Can't cry in front of your wife. Always got to be stern
Right.
and never tell her anything bad that happened to you. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So I don't play. I don't play into these ridiculous masculinity bro things.
Yeah.
I get tough when I gotta get tough. You know what I'm saying? But
Sure.
I share my life story with my wife. So I said, yo, look at this guy's book. Look what it's called, Ruminations of a Low Status Male, right? So it was funny because she knows like some of the hangups that I had previously. What I told you. You know what I'm saying? She's like, um,
Yeah. She thought I might be a bad influence on you.
no, 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 no. She didn't think that. She could see why someone like me would want to read it. You know what I'm saying?
Oh, okay.
Yeah, because she knows me. You know what I mean? Um,
Yeah.
yeah. So anyway, it was great talking to you. I really liked it.
Yeah. Enjoyed it, and stay in touch.
Oh yeah, definitely. I'll stay in touch and we'll set something up again.
Cool. All right.
Okay. Have
Good
a
to
good night.
meet you.
Okay.
Take
See you.
care.